Thank you, Carmen. And I think we all owe a bow of homage to the many people who've made this possible, including, among others, the translators and the people who have been preparing and serving the meals we've been enjoying. There's a lot of work that I know we all know goes into making something like this happen. Among all the dialogues that need to go on, I think, is one between our inner self and our outer self. That is between our technical capability and our need for social and moral responsibility. Or to put it another way, between the internet and the internet. And it's appropriate that we meet to discuss these dialogues here in Greece, because it was the Greeks who were among the first to understand the concept of, and in fact create the word, technology. Technologos, the study of human effects. But to the ancient Greeks, in their wisdom, it referred not just to the tools we use to manipulate the outer world, it also referred to the tools that we use to calm and enhance the inner world. Prayer, meditation, qigong, drama, dancing, and music. But it seems now that we're putting focus almost entirely on tools that manifest and manipulate the outer world at the risk of tools that we use to leverage the inner world. Allow me to make some observations on this based on my own 40 years writing about technology in a place that's now called Silicon Valley, but for most of its history was known by the name of St. Francis of Assisi, the author of the words, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." I was raised in a faith tradition, educated in the humanities, and trained as a filmmaker, when one day in 1974, I backed into an opportunity to do a film for a computer company. One thing led to another, jobs led to other jobs, and I've come to realize now that I've had a ringside seat at ground zero of the digital revolution for 4 decades, and I have some thoughts on this I'd like to share. Although I've been a technology evangelist all those years, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that the downside of this revolution, the physical, intellectual, and moral dislocation, has become unsustainable. So what do we do? I recommend that both as individuals and communities, we begin to rediscover the 2 golden nuggets of antiquity. That is to say, the golden mean and the golden rule. The golden mean urges us to moderation. The mean, the middle between the extremes on one hand of this bizarre obsession we have with cool stuff that has no meaning other than the fact that it's cool stuff on one hand, and the other extreme of bankrupting our nations, building smart weapons to conduct dumb wars. We need to remind ourselves that it's up to us to find that middle ground. And recall that tools exist for us. We don't exist for the sake of our tools. Carmen, could I have some water? Water, please. To appreciate the difference between our tools and ourselves, keep in mind that it takes almost 4 minutes for the fastest runner to run a mile. On the other hand, an electron can go around the world 8 times in 1 second. There's no way we can keep up with our technology, and we're burning ourselves out trying to do that. So, going back to the golden mean, and this is something we can do ourselves, make a conscious effort to stick to the middle path between these extremes of cool stuff, technology for its own sake, and smart weapons that are leading us to the brink. The second gold nugget of antiquity is the golden rule, that is, to be kind. I'm fully aware of the many benefits of digital technology. In fact, last summer in 2011, I spent nearly 2 months in a coma. And my family tells me after the fact that I was hooked up to 15 digital machines that were monitoring me and keeping me alive. So it would be very ill-mannered of me to be critical of digital technology. But I also think it's time we re-examine the entire technical enterprise. This is especially so now that the control of these is coming into the hands of an increasingly small clique of the powerful who have utterly no moral, social, or ethical compass. Consider that even as we live in what's now called the digital or the information age, we seem to be witnessing a global dumbing down, and more than a cynical trivialization and a disparagement of everything that was once thought to be honorable. We conduct so much energy to make this never-ending line of must-have consumer electronic devices that will be obsolete in a year, made by slave labor, and have components that are very, very toxic to us and to the environment. And most of these devices are used primarily to bombard us with so-called entertainment that reeks of violence and salaciousness, meant to hold our attention until the commercials come on to excite our greed and envy. These are the new civic virtues: violence, salaciousness, greed, and envy. And with that, by their coolness factor, they're replacing integrity with vapidity and vulgarity. But like shoots of grass that manage somehow always to sprout up among dead concrete, there is emerging all over the world small silos of compassion that are trying to use the new technologies to leverage kindness and compassion on a global scale, simultaneously global and local. Among these are groups like Engineers Without Frontiers, Service Space, the Charter for Compassion, and many others. And I have a list of those at my website and in my ebook. The ebook is titled Reconnecting.com, CALM. And those websites are on this card, which I have, and I'd be happy to give to you. And I've also put a stack out on the table at the entrance. I've been using bullet points for 25 years. I try not to use them anymore. Many of the groups that operate in these silos are very active, very successful, but they're very much compartmentalized. And I think what we need to do is to form some organization or some structure, some platform by which we can bring these together to be more aware of each other and leverage on each other's capabilities. In other words, a global infrastructure of compassion. The Greek word, or the modern words economy, ecology, and ecclesiastical come from the same Greek word, meaning home. We need to start refashioning a portfolio of tools in order to rebuild our decrepit home. We need a place, a site, a location, both physically as well as in the cloud, where groups can gather to talk about and display the way they use the new technologies to undertake this beneficial, virtuous approach to solutions. A living laboratory of best practices, case histories, that permit individuals and groups to become acquainted with each other, leverage their common output, and connect their silos of compassion into a cohesive whole. This way we can turn the globalization against those who are manipulating it and collecting power into the hands of a very few and redistributing power to the very many powerless. And on that regard, I'd like to point out something that's becoming aware in an in-choke way to many of us. We now live in a police state, certainly in the United States. Every word and every deed, every mood, every action, every emotion is being tracked by the global security emphasis. And this has especially exploded under the administration of Barack Obama, shamefully. There is no longer any attempt to be, and anyone who is considered to be a self-satisfied, full-time consumer, anybody who doesn't meet that standard, is coming to be regarded as an enemy to the state. And what they read, what they say, who they communicate with is under constant surveillance. Global firms like Apple, Facebook, and Google track us constantly and now provide that information to the national security apparatus in our country called the National Security Agency. So that Starbucks, if they wanted to, could find out my shoe size, and the National Security Agency would know what books I'm reading. And it's a cruel irony that while Steve Jobs is being canonized as a great saint, in fact, he's had a duplicitous effect on us. If you remember the commercial in 1984, why that year, the year of the Macintosh, would not be like George Orwell's 1984, it turns out that the products, the iPhone, the iPad, and so on, have in fact laid out the groundwork, the mechanism for total police surveillance on everything we say and do. Think of these products collectively as I Spy on You by Big Brother. We also, I think, among all the basic human rights, need to consider the human right of privacy, at least to some extent. That doesn't exist anymore. As one of the founders of Sun Microsystems said 15 years ago, you have no privacy anymore. Get used to it. Well, I'm not going to get used to it. Neither should you. So can we reclaim our humanhood from a global corporate state that has thoughtlessly ravaged the future for our children for the sake of quarterly earnings calls? I think we can. It's not too late, but we're close to the brink. There's no time to lose. And I would remind you of what Gandhi, Mandela, Dr. King, and so many others have said, that nothing is impossible to those who believe that nothing is impossible. Gandhi observed that no evil regime has ever endured. Dr. King noticed that the arc of history bends towards justice. With those two comments to give us hope, we now have to awaken from this dozing digital indolence that we've been lulled into and wrest control of our new technologies from the hands of an ignoble few and turn it over to ennoble the hands of a powerless many. And recall the words of the French philosopher Teilhard de Chardin. We can create a critical mass of compassion. The internet will allow it. And to live out the dream that Chardin had 50 years ago, somehow, someday, after we have mastered the winds and the waves, the tides and the gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. Or to put it another way, with our minds and our hearts, let us pray for peace. And with our tools and our new technologies, let us work for justice. And so it will be. So I invite you, if you're interested in this, I have much, much, much more on the subject at my websites, which are on the business cards I've left outside, or see me, and I'll be happy to give you one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Many thanks, Tom. Wow, what a